Born on May 30th, 1928, in Ixelles, Belgium, Agnes Varda quickly became one of the most important figures in the history of film after zero experience, zero practice, and zero film education. All she had was a camera and a desire to explore the symbiotic relationship between photography and cinema, an idea that ultimately came to fruition with her first film, La Pointe Courte. This desire marks the beginning of an artist who lives what she refers to as three separate lives as a photographer, filmmaker, and visual artist, each life inspiring and influencing the other in a relationship based on intense synergy operating between the three. Varda's entire career as an artist created what can be referred to as a gendered mirror, as she holds a mirror up to herself as a woman, reflecting her life experiences into her work. Little did she know her small experiment would be the beginning of a journey to becoming one of the gods of cinema. It's no doubt that Varda was drawn to the arts at a very young age. As a young woman, she studied art history at the École du Louvre and received a bachelor's degree in literature and psychology from La Sorbonne before studying photography at the École des Beaux-Arts, all highly prestigious institutions. After graduating from the École des Beaux-Arts, Varda ventured on to becoming the lead photographer at the Théâtre National Populaire in Paris, where she worked for nearly a decade. It was here that she realized, I wanted to make what I call compositions, and it was with these that I had the impression I was doing something where I was asking a question with composition, form, and meaning. Her photography subjects span far and wide, but most commonly she captured women, ultimately kickstarting her career in crafting the mirror that would reflect herself for decades to come. In an interview with the LA Review of Books, Varda describes that she does not like taking photographs of monuments and buildings, simply because she does like taking photographs of people. In the same interview, Varda begs the question, how do we deal with the border between the still images and moving images? And answers it by stating that it is imperative that one asks what happened right before and after the snapshot, ultimately creating a story. This practice of creating a three-part story from only a singular photograph is what ultimately inspired Varda to see to it that her photographs came to life in a grander medium, cinema and filmmaking. Thus, Varda entered a new life as a beautiful filmmaker, but don't worry, she left the door to her old life as a photographer slightly ajar. In her 2019 film, Varda by Agnes, Varda explains that she likes to bring together reality and its representation. I also like to juxtapose moving images and still images, in video and in photography. This goal is very apparent in La Pointe Courte. La Pointe Courte follows a young couple as they attempt to rekindle their dying romance. When making this film, Varda took photographs of everything I wanted to film, photographs that are almost models for the shots, and I started making films with the sole experience of photography. That's to say, where to place the camera, at what distance, with which lens, and what lights. Varda's most popular film to date is undoubtedly Cleo from 5 to 7. The film is about young pop vocalist Cleo, short for Cleopatra, as she grapples with the possibility of being diagnosed with cancer at a very young age. The film follows Cleo around the streets of Paris as she peruses around, offering insight into her journey of self-exploration, ultimately resulting in self-discovery. It is in her Cleo from 5 to 7 that we begin to see strong elements of the aforementioned gendered mirror that is present in much of Varda's work. Cleo from 5 to 7 leans deep into this idea of mirroring life, and Varda is obvious in her attempt to make viewers notice this. There are multiple moments in which Cleo gets caught up in looking at herself in a mirror, authenticating her beauty and liveliness when facing her own untimely mortality. As the film progresses, Cleo's reflection starts to distort upon itself, signifying a loss of identity. However, after wandering around a park by her lonesome and fatefully making a new friend, she starts to accept the beauty in her life. Furthermore, she realizes through her new friendship with Antoine that there are people who are facing a similar imminent threat that she had to face on this day, and accepts her fate as inevitable. "I think my fear is gone," Cleo states at the very end of the movie. In her 1977 film, One Sings, the Other Doesn't, Varda introduces two female characters who bond over an illegal abortion, Pom and Suzanne. The film follows the two women as they travel through their separate lives, involving themselves in the fight for women's empowerment and abortion rights. Pom and Suzanne only communicate through postcards before reuniting decades later with their families. One Sings, the Other Doesn't is undoubtedly a film about female friendship and the experience as a woman, specifically pertaining to women's rights, as Varda describes in her 2019 discussion-turned-documentary Varda by Agnes. And 10 years later, we see them again after they've both lived, loved, and fought the feminist fight. Incredible friendships formed in that collective struggle. Varda herself has discussed participating in related protests to the ones she shows in One Sings, the Other Doesn't, such as signing the 1971 Manifesto of 343 Women and the Movement for the Freedom of Abortion and Contraception, furthering this idea of a gendered mirror. There are clear similarities prevalent in Varda's life and in One Sings, the Other Doesn't, and these similarities reflect the female hardships of the time. It is interesting to see the parallels that align with today's political climate, as 2024 marks the year that France officially made the constitutional decision to legalize abortion, a feat that the women of One Sings, the Other Doesn't, and Varda herself as a woman fought hard to see come to fruition. After making countless films traversing across various different genres, Varda realized that she wanted to make visual art. In an interview with Criterion, Varda describes his transition from cinema to the visual arts as changing from an old filmmaker to a young visual artist, officially marking the beginning of her third and final life. When filming The Gleaners and I, a documentary film about gleaning, Varda found herself enamored by the heart-shaped potatoes she was surrounded by, and was inspired to create one of her first solo visual art exhibits, Potatotopia. Potatotopia was an exploration of life and rebirth. As Varda states, "I let the heart-shaped potatoes shrivel up and die, but despite it all, they found new life as sprouts and roots. This work about rot and decay marked my entry into the group of artists known as visual artists." Potatotopia was configured in a triptych formation as a 3-screen video arrangement, each screen presenting a different image of potatoes and each representing a different area of life. Furthermore, Varda's installation at the Cartier Foundation for Contemporary Art in Paris, The Widows of Noirmoutier, also falls into the category of a gendered mirror. The exhibit is a multimedia installation in which Varda traveled to Noirmoutier, where she and her late husband, Jacques Demy, had a home together, and conducted video interviews of community widowers. Varda herself was a widower at the time and included herself in the polyptych. In Varda's 2017 documentary, Faces Places, she combines her life as a photographer, filmmaker, and visual artist into one. The film follows Varda as she travels around France with friend and co-director J.R. while they photographed portraits of the humans they encountered. They ended up plastering the enlarged photos on various buildings, solidifying an everyday person's place in the big world. Varda ultimately created 40 exhibitions in only 16 years before sadly losing her life on March 29, 2019, leaving behind a reputation of feminist motifs and immense innovation.